η ηλικία σας, μικρός, χαρούμενος, όπως είστε εσείς, αλλά δυστυχώς έγινα παππούς. Θα σας περιμένω στην Κωνσταντινούπολη. Σας αγαπώ πολύ. Θα σας δω πάλι σε λίγο, μετά την ομιλία που θα κάνω εδώ, στην εκκλησία, εδώ στο πλάι, και θα σας δώσω και σοκολάτες. Εντάξει.
Πάμε, τις ζωγραφιές, παιδιά. Δώστε τις ζωγραφιές. Ζωγραφιές.
Παιδάκια, έλατε λίγο.
Πώς σε λένε? Πώς σε λένε, παιδί, Κωνσταντίνο πες.
Έλα, όπα, σιγά, προσέξτε με.
Κι άλλα, Παναγιώτατε. Εσύ το Άπλος το χέρι σου εκεί. Άπλος το χέρι σου εκεί να το δει.
Mama. Dear Mr. Ladoukakis, dear children, may I now ask you to, for the children who want to stay, please, you will get a cushion and you make yourself comfortable. But for those who would like to do fun activities, a team is waiting for you outside the door. Many thanks.
Good afternoon, dear friends, Your Holiness, Your Excellencies, sisters and brothers, those who have been here since the morning and those who have arrived now during the day. A warm welcome to the Ecumenical Center and to the World Council of Churches as we together with UNICEF organize this celebration of the World Children's Day. We are happy as we also are mindful of why we mark this day. The children of the world needs our attention, they need our solidarity, they need our active care and love. We are particularly grateful that as an important part of this day, we can welcome you, Your All Holiness, Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew I, and that you have agreed to be with us and to deliver a keynote speech at this occasion. Patriarch Bartholomew is, for all of us, a very important Christian leader. In the World Council of Churches, an Orthodox leader who is well known and respected for the commitment to inter-Orthodox but also to inter-Christian dialogue as well to inter-religious relations and dialogue. And for the way you have raised our awareness and many people's and churches' awareness of the ecological threat at the global level and in many contexts. You have been walking and praying and working with us as we have used this as a motto for this 70th anniversary in many ways. But you have been with us before, during this anniversary, and also today. As you have offered also your service to the World Council of Churches in different roles, also in the Faith and Order Commission and in the Central Committee of the World Council of Churches. We feel your support and your commitment to the World Council of Churches very strongly as you also come for this event. So, Your All Holiness, we see that your ecumenical commitment reflects a great potential for all religious leaders to not only know about what the World Children's Day is, but participating in it and confronting together with us and with partners like UNICEF these challenges we face as we look to the world's children today. We thank you for agreeing to be with us, to walk and pray and work with us. We know that many look at you as the Green Patriarch. I think we see that your involvement also in this issue will lead to many seeing you as also the Children's Patriarch. We see many photos of you with children, and we will see many photos of this day as well with you and children. We have seen also their enthusiasm of being here. In your Christmas message in 2016, you appealed to all the faithful around the world to respect the identity and the sacredness of childhood. And you declared 2017 as the year of protection of the sacredness of childhood. By this, you have given leadership to many churches, to many others, to see the child and the children with God's eyes and God's care. Thank you again for being with us, and we are very open and very full of expectation for your speech. Thank you.
Dear Secretary General, Your Eminencies, diplomats, professors, dear sisters and brothers. It is with great joy that this year we once again visit the headquarters of the World Council of Churches during the festive celebrations of its 70th anniversary. At this moment, our eyes are turned not to our common past, but toward our common future, our children. It is important to bear in mind that children do not only represent our future, but that they are in fact the present upon which the future is being built. It is not by chance that in the Gospel, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ presents children and childhood as an existence open to God, the key to enter his kingdom. Jesus Christ said, "Let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." Elsewhere, he even stated, "Truly I say to you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." It is extremely sad to see that in today's world, children are being abused or threatened, sometimes even in our own church communities. Protecting children from any kind of violence has always been and should remain an essential message of Christianity. Therefore, Christians are called to protect children both in society and within their own communities. This is why the Ecumenical Patriarchate is particularly pleased with the collaboration established between UNICEF and World Council of Churches on the Church's commitments to children. In fact, just before this program of the WCC was launched, we called upon our spiritual children and people of goodwill in our Christmas encyclical in December 2016, as it is already said by the Secretary General, to respect the identity and sacredness of childhood. We encouraged churches to protect children from the plague of mortality, hunger, and enforced labor, abuse, and psychological violence, as well as the dangers of uncontrolled exposure to contemporary electronic means of communication, which can negatively affect their souls and their behavior. In 2017, the year that we declared as the Year of Protection of the Sacredness of Childhood, we organized, in collaboration with Archbishop Justin Welby of Canterbury, Primate of all England, a forum on modern slavery that took place in Istanbul, slavery and human trafficking. Knowing that children are among the primary victims of human trafficking, we stressed on this occasion that true faith is a source of permanent struggle against the powers of inhumanity. Together with the Church of England, we encouraged state leaders to find appropriate and effective ways to prosecuting those involved in human trafficking, preventing all forms of modern-day slavery, and protecting its victims in our communities and promoting hope wherever people are exploited. Afterward, a second forum on modern slavery, entitled Old Problems in the New World, took place in Buenos Aires from May 5 to 8, 2018, and included video messages offered by Our Modesty, as well as by our brothers, Pope Francis of Rome and Archbishop Justin Welby of Canterbury. We have also announced plans to convene a third forum on modern slavery with the theme Awareness, Action, and Impact, which is scheduled for early January 2019 in Istanbul again, in order to further address this global scourge that traps millions of people to lives of suffering, injustice, and humiliation. Today, we also face many other challenges that affect children. The impressive developments that have been achieved in the sectors of technology and communication constitute a serious threat against the dignity of childhood, with the computer and the internet dominating every aspect of individual and social life. Some of the consequences of this change include the so-called disappearance of childhood, the loss of the innocence of children, and an early induction into adulthood. Children are indeed growing up very quickly, and the impact that parents and family have on their formation is weakened when the internet functions as a primary source of values on a global scale. An electronic device is not a suitable replacement for a babysitter, nor can it ever be a good father, mother, or teacher. A child sitting in front of a computer screen is incompatible with its vital need for physical activity and personal communication. While humanity has labored for the protection and preservation of childhood in the last century, the century of the child and the century of education, we are shortening the span of childhood through the optical and digital revolution of the internet, television, smartphones, and tablets. That means that the power of formation and the space where we can educate children is shrinking. It has been rightly noted that mankind has begun to forget again that children need an authentic childhood experience. All of these problems, created through the surrender of culture to technology, are intensified by the dominance of economism, the fundamentalism of the market, and the deification of profit, and subjugate the souls of children to the attitude of having instead of the attitude of being, as well as to materialism and utilitarianism. In our societies, children are transformed from a very early age into consumers. They are forced to adopt a competitive lifestyle, to regard economic criteria as supreme values, and to identify happiness and freedom with possession and with the satisfaction of their ever-growing needs. Children today are treated purely as markets and consumeristic units, and childhood is thereby transformed into an economic category. In addition to these ever-increasing problems, we face other issues that are intrinsically linked with globalization and the consequences of technology, such as immigration and climate change, which affect children to a great extent. In fact, children are among the most vulnerable with regard to these problems. Every day, we witness images of children in war zones as refugees and immigrants without protection and as victims of famine caused by ecological disasters and climate change. In 2015 and 2016, 300,000 children across the globe were in migratory situations with no adults to accompany them. This is 5 times larger than the same statistic in 2010 and 2011, 5 years earlier. These children and young people traverse dangerous paths to reach their destination, such as routes through the Aegean and the central Mediterranean, and are often separated from their families, fleeing from violence, misery, poverty, or catastrophes related to ecological disasters. Consequently, they find themselves at the mercy of traffickers and smugglers who abuse and mistreat them. We are cognizant of the intensifying immigrant and refugee crisis that is challenging our humanistic, moral, and religious principles. Obviously, these immense problems cannot be addressed with bureaucratic, administrative, temporary, or technocratic measures and principles. Courage, engagement, solidarity, openness, and faith are required. We must act more decisively, more rapidly, more collaboratively, and more effectively against this challenging situation. In 2016, we traveled with our brothers, Pope Francis of Rome and Archbishop Hieronymus of Athens, to the Lesbos Moria refugee camp, which at that time was home to some 2,500 refugees, many of which were children and youth. In fact, our visit was organized at a time when the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees announced that more than 22,000 refugee children were stuck in Greece, facing an uncertain future. At that time, we stated that the Mediterranean Sea should not be a tomb. It is a place of life, a crossroad of cultures and civilizations, a place of exchange and dialogue. We then promised that we shall never forget them. We shall never stop speaking for them, and we assure them that we will do everything to open the eyes and hearts of the world for them. Environmental immigration is an increasingly intense type of immigration that produces a multitude of ecological refugees, the so-called climate change refugees, or environmentally displaced persons. These are people who are forced to leave their homes due to sudden or long-term climate changes in their local environment. Climate refugees may choose to flee or immigrate to another country, or they may migrate internally within their own region. Children are especially vulnerable to climate change and environmental degradation. When water becomes scarce because of drought, the poorest children and families are most likely to resort to unsafe water sources. As we have repeatedly affirmed, we endorse and are committed to various international agreements that recognize environmental resources as God's gift to the world and not as private property to be exploited. Moreover, their sustainability and stewardship demand a proportionate legal and canonical obligation, which cannot be undermined or ignored. Any abuse of our Earth's resources, and above all of water, as the source and symbol of life and renewal, contradicts our sacred and social obligation to other people, and especially to those who live in poverty and in the margins of society. Water is a fundamental good which must be accessible for all people, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, or any other aspect of discrimination. In 1989, the Ecumenical Patriarchate designated the first day of the ecclesiastical year, September 1st, to be the day of the protection of the natural environment. Continuing in this spirit, a year ago, we co-signed a declaration with Pope Francis to affirm that there can be no enduring resolution to climate change unless the response is concerted and collective. Still, even as so many recognize climate change as arguably the greatest crisis that humanity has ever faced, there is much resistance to any call for change. Even when presented with unprecedented glacial melting, extreme weather patterns, and devastating impacts on world poverty, some continue to ignore the signs of our times. The issues of immigration, refugees, and climate change are closely linked and will remain the biggest global challenges that our world will have to face in the coming years. It is estimated that 500 million children live in flood-prone areas. 160 million children are exposed to severe drought, and 115 million children are exposed to tropical cyclones. Other statistics show that every year, environmental risks take the lives of 1.7 million children under the age of 5. Therefore, climate change serves as a primary cause of child immigration and, in turn, represents a serious threat to their lives. Therefore, dear brothers and sisters, our churches must undertake initiatives that promote the protection of the environment and subsequently our children. For this reason, on many different occasions we have expressed our dismay that while it is clear that the ecological crisis is constantly escalating in the name of growth and development, humanity remains oblivious to the global appeals for radical change in our attitudes toward creation. As stated by the Holy and Great Council of the Orthodox Church, which convened on the island of Crete in June 2016. Quotation. The approach to the ecological problem on the basis of the principles of the Christian tradition demands a radical change in mentality and behavior, but also asceticism as antidote to consumerism, the deification of needs, and the acquisitive attitude. It also presupposes our greatest responsibility to hand down a viable natural environment to future generations and to use it according to divine will and blessing. This quotation is taken from the encyclical of the Holy and Great Council. As one of the founding member churches of the WCC, the Ecumenical Patriarchate was pleased with the approval of the child safeguarding policy during the Central Committee meeting last June. This document calls WCC member churches to promote child protection in our church communities, preventing children from experiencing violence. Christian communities should be places of refuge for children in distress, similar to how Egypt was a land of refuge for the infant child escaping the cruelty of Herod. We also stand together with UNICEF in the promotion of its new initiative, Children on the Move. As previously mentioned, migratory children are often the first to be affected by war, conflict, climate change, and poverty. Their protection is the shared responsibility of our churches. As underscored in another significant document of the Holy and Great Council concerning the mission of the Orthodox Church in today's world, the Church cannot remain indifferent to the problems of humanity in each period. The word addressed to the world is not primarily meant to judge and condemn the world, but rather to offer to the world the guidance of the gospel of the kingdom of God, namely the hope and assurance that evil, no matter its form, does not have the last word in history and must not be allowed to dictate its course. So we thank and congratulate all those who engage in initiatives supporting the protection of children and efforts relating to intergenerational climate justice. Beloved brothers and sisters in Christ, this year we celebrate the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In its preamble, this document calls human rights the common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations, whereas Article 25, paragraph 2 refers to the protection of motherhood and childhood. Motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same social protection. Moreover, next year we will celebrate two equally important anniversaries for the protection of child rights and childhood. The 60th anniversary of the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of the Child, as well as the 30th anniversary of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. For Orthodox Christianity, the highest ethos is the renouncement of our individual rights in the name of love, in the name of agape, for the sake of the protection of the rights of the other. Consequently, we defend the rights of children and promote the protection of their integrity. We strive to uphold their dignity in the digital space, to eradicate their abuse and exploitation, together with all forms of violence and discrimination. It is clear that our ecological initiatives against climate change are in and of themselves an expression of our care for children and future generations. Christian faith inspires and strengthens our commitment for dignity, justice, and solidarity. It supports our effort, even if it seems to be at an impasse. Indeed, faithful can be, and they have to be, more humanists than the mere humanists. Then the struggle for the protection of human dignity will not be just a moral appeal, but a supreme commandment of the God of love. In this spirit, we declare, every day, not only one day of the year, such as yesterday, when we celebrated the World Children's Day. I repeat, every day is a day for children. Every year, and not just 2017, is a year for the protection of the sacredness of childhood. The eyes of all children are brighter than the sun, and their souls are purer than light. They never bear a mask. They are full of confidence and cordial wisdom. For us Orthodox Christians, the most frequently encountered and impressive holy icon is that of Jesus Christ as a child, a true child and a true God, embraced by His All Holy Mother. Dear friends, in Christian faith, God Himself assumed flesh as an infant and called us to become like children, so that we may be deemed worthy to become gods by grace. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Your All Holiness, for these very significant words on this very special day. But as you said, it is not only for this day, it is for every day, and they will remain with us as an inspiration and as a guidance. Thank you so much. Now I have the honor also to invite Mr. Philippe Corrie, the Deputy Regional Director of UNICEF Regional Office for Europe and Central Asia, to address us.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's very difficult to say a few words after Your All Holiness. It has been very inspiring. I was listening to what you were saying. A lot of visionary thought. In this city, 29 years ago, a convention was submitted for ratification to what we called in those days the Human Rights Commission. And it came by accident. I was explaining this morning how it came out. Everybody was focused on Cuba, Soviet and US fighting. Absolutely not on this convention in the making, which was basically recognizing specific rights to children. And many people were challenging, why do we need specific rights for children? And the answer was because they are special. And they are in need of special protection. So we need to acknowledge these very specific rights. To this date, this is the most ratified convention in the human rights agenda in the history of humanity. And it came by accident. But we still have to this date, despite all the progress, challenges. And this recognizes the best interest of the child. This convention brings this principle, the best interest of the child. And it's still a challenge when we have children coming to Europe because of climate change, because of wars, to recognize the best interest of the child. Many countries, many institutions interpret in different ways the best interest of the child. So we still have that challenge. And this is a new frontier, Your Holiness. The best interest of the child is really something that is core to what could be the dignity, the respect, the right to education, the right to nutrition, the right to protection that are still denied to many children. One-third of the population of the world is children. Half of the population of refugees is children. Half. So they are the most affected. And when they come, because they are on the move, as you were referring to, they are trafficked, they are exposed to violations of this right that are enormous, and we have seen that. And 28 million of these 50 million are actually fleeing their countries because of violence and conflicts, man-made. And more to come in the years to come, as you were rightfully saying, because of climate change, because of the lack of water. And we see it in many countries around the Mediterranean. In Africa, it's coming. Of famine, because of droughts. And that is something that we see day by day unfolding. I just came back. I was working in South Asia, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in India, in Bangladesh, where you have massive numbers of children. The air pollution has reached such a level that you can barely breathe without a mask. You can barely work in your own offices with all these air purifiers. This is today. And when you look at the size of the lungs of children, This is the upcoming main cause for death of children. This is not that much talked about, but this is already happening. And I like in your speech, the issue of internet. I mean, social network, internet, there is good things about it. But when we ask about, to a company as UNICEF, what would be in 30 years the main disease for children? And they said virtuality. Virtuality. They are going to be, prisoner of this virtuality, and therefore lose a sense of reality. And we see it already coming in terms of social interaction, all the challenge that it has when you lose sight of reality and you lose sight of the respect to the other, when you see radicalization of youth, where killing becomes like a video game. This is coming in, and it's going to be amplifying itself. So I was very impressed that you place it as a core dimension of your speech. It was really new. We never hear about that, but this is coming, and we see it already. And you said a very important thing as well is anything can be, mountains can be lifted if we are doing it together. It's about partnership. And this morning I was mentioning that despite the skepticism around the Convention on the Rights of the Child, it's because the non-governmental organization, like very actively actually the World Council of Churches, push for this convention that it happened. So when there is a lot, what we call the power, and you are a representative of the power of good. The power of good is enormous when it is in conjunction with others. And this is something that we should never ignore, and I've seen it in many countries. And your focus on climate change, I don't know if it's protocol-wise correct to call you the Green Patriarch, but this is something that is also telling a lot about your understanding of what's coming up in the years to come in terms of what we have to address as challenges for children. And it's probably one of the most affecting and growing trends that will be a denying force of children's rights. So from UNICEF, we wish to first thank you for the honor to celebrate your 70th anniversary and also the 29th anniversary of the convention. To continue, we commit to continue that partnership. We see a lot of value, and Your All Holiness, we would like to continue also with your spiritual and power of goodness to push the agenda for children wherever they are. Children are children. Whether they are migrant, whether they are poor, whether they are Roma, they are children. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank you because, I was asking, we have to sign. We have a petition, which is basically, restating our commitment to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, recognizing those rights of children. And that 29 years ago, we have pushed as the convention. And that petition will be presented next year at the same date to celebrate the 30 years of the anniversary of the 30 years of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We hope to get millions of signatures. And you are basically one of the first, Your All Holiness, because I see you already signed. Thank you for that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm also ready to sign on behalf of the World Council of Churches, and I think we will be all invited to do so.
Do it right away.
Right away.
Thank you so much.
And by this, we end this part of the program, and we will thank you for your participation. But more will happen, and we will hear more about that.
The children and teachers from the Greek School of Geneva and Lausanne will now have a special moment with His All Holiness, the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople in the WCC chapel. Everyone else is warmly asked to stay for the next session, which is about how we build on this momentum together. So please stay seated for the next moment. We will just wait a few seconds for the Greek delegation to enter the chapel. The program continues here in Wissertoft Hall. Antonia, may I ask you to please join me for this session? Antonia Antonopoulos is the head of the Civil Society Partnerships Unit in UNICEF headquarters. And it is thanks to her and her predecessor, Liza Berry, that we are working together since 2015. It has been an amazing journey since 2015 to see how much we can achieve for children by collaborating between WCC and UNICEF. The program of this morning has given some highlights on the 3 most pressing issues of children today: violence in schools, children on the move, climate justice. You are here from many different organizations: the UN, from secular NGOs, and from faith-based organizations. I would like to encourage you to build on what was achieved so far in the WCC-UNICEF partnership and to consider collaborating with churches on protection, on participation, and on climate justice. The churches are very close to the reality of the most vulnerable children and of the most talented young children. Together with organizations like UNICEF and with you, we can really move mountains. In my case, I witnessed as a child how sensitive a church community can be as a shelter in case of domestic violence. When I worked with UNICEF before in my past professional assignments, I met a lot of children, especially in Rwanda and Bangladesh. And I'm thinking here of Bonane Noel in Rwanda in particular, who was raising his 2 siblings, being aged 13, all by himself. He told me that it is his faith which was giving him the strength to cope with the daily challenges of what he had to do to live and care for his siblings. Therefore, I would also like to say how much resilience can be strengthened by churches and by other religious communities, the resilience of children. A big thanks, therefore, to UNICEF, to you, Antonia, to Katarina Tino, for making our collaboration so fruitful. Online here you see the online platform. Details of where to find this platform is outside on leaflets. This is the one-stop place where you can find how to work with churches. You just go and click, for example, on the country where you are based or where your organization would like to work with churches. Anne-Marie, could we just do one example? You click on the bubble. And here, for example, if you are based in Turkey, the one bubble you will find is actually about the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Of course, this is global, but we have located it there because that's where he is based. And you will immediately find an email address where you can interact directly with that particular member church of WCC, because we do not want to create delays by going through here, headquarters of WCC, but we work hard on this platform with my colleague Virak to make sure that you find your counterparts right away.
Thank you so much, Frederic. And thank you so much to all of you who are joining us here today for a very unique event. It's the first of this kind between UNICEF and the World Council of Churches, framed under the Church's commitment to children, which you've been hearing about today. And I just wanted to say the first time that I came to Geneva, it was to come to this very hall. It's the first time I visited the World Council of Churches. That was in January of 2016. And we co-hosted an event with other UN agencies on the refugee and migration migration crisis. And that was one of the first high-level meetings that had been organized to address the needs of children within the crisis. And being in this room with the member churches of the World Council of Churches and other partners, and to hear the passion and compassion that was expressed for the plight of refugee and migrant children was something that, as committed as we are in the secular organizations, there was a heart here and a platform where you were allowed to express your heart. You were allowed to use words like love, which we're typically not using in our professional settings. So that warmth, that commitment to something that we have seen in the past few years, and some of the boldest statements that have been made on behalf of children have come from faith groups of all faiths and from the Christian tradition as well. So we at UNICEF consider the partnership with the World Council of Churches to be a critical global partnership, which we will be continuing for years to come. And I think that will be rather easy to do because in the past few years, we can always count on the World Council of Churches. We have always been able to count on the goodwill and commitment that the World Council has shown to children's issues whenever we make an ask of the World Council to promote our issues, our campaigns for children. It is always a yes. I have yet to hear a no. So thank you very much to the World Council of Churches. We heard many examples today of what churches are doing, and Reverend Antoinette Steiner, if she's still here, also reminded us that humanity and solidarity don't belong to one group, but we all have the responsibility to multiply it within the context that we're in. And one commitment in particular that I just wanted to lay emphasis to, that are one of the three commitments in the Church's commitment to children, is the promotion of child participation. And I think today we also saw how important it is to give the voice and the platform to children. I heard from a lot of the adults making presentations, a lot of, a new term that I just made up called PowerPoint guilt. Everybody seemed to apologize every time they might use PowerPoint. And that's because we all know it's so much more effective and interesting when we hear the voices of children. So today we heard from Laura, from Jonathan, from Kieran, from Sanusi, who I think is not here right now, and Colleen. I don't know if she's here, and it was... They had to leave. Okay, Colleen said it was her first time making a public speech, and she did a great job. Unfortunately, she's not here to hear that right now. But the powerful, very real testimonies that we heard today from the children are just another testament to show us how important it is and the role that churches and other faith groups can play in giving that space to children, and how important it is to embrace young people. And just on a final personal note, if I may. When I was a teenager myself, I was very much affected by UNICEF. We learned about UNICEF in school. We learned about environmental issues at school. But I also was very affected because when I was a teenager, His All Holiness Patriarch Bartholomew was already the Green Patriarch. And I would, sit in church and hear sermons where his encyclicals were being read to us. And so myself as an adolescent, I felt very enheartened that the messages coming from what I was hearing in school were being echoed and reinforced in the private sphere as well. And I think that's a testament to how important it is that faith groups and secular groups come together to reinforce the common and shared values that we have as humanity, for children, etc. So I want to thank you all for coming here today. And again, a huge thanks to the World Council of Churches. And if I may make one final spotlight thanks to my colleague, Caterina Tino, who has been a huge, and to Frederic Sidel, of course. Caterina, could you come up here one moment, please? If we could please give Caterina a big round of applause, if I may. And to Frederica, because these are two individuals that have given their sweat and their heart to the Church's commitment for children, along with other people in this room, of course. But I just wanted to make a very special mention to the extremely hard work and heart work that has gone into this.
It is really our General Secretary and the WCC. I mean, if I may just hand over to you. But please note the program is continuing. The next part at 2:30 will have more children, but the program continues. Please stay.
Thank you for your way of expressing what we also feel, that this partnership and this day has expressed it very well, and that it really points to the future. Thank you to you and your colleagues, thanks to all my colleagues and everybody who have made this day possible. And let us continue to enjoy it. Happy birthday, we will sing later. But now I say thank you.
Thank you.
Some practical information now.